Hey, this is Jack, and this video is a different kind of video. It's an invitation to you to think about how you might build some bridges in your life. So let me explain what I'm talking about. Here in the US, this is election year. In many parts of the world, there are actually elections. I think over 1 billion voters will go to the polls in democratic countries and vote for either a president or a new government, or to keep a government in office. And we know that these are difficult times. I may actually later go and watch, there's a new Alex Garland movie, maybe you've heard of it, called Civil War. And this isn't fantastical in the sense that those people that study Civil War, the academics that do, are saying that the levels of civic inflammation, the markers of civic inflammation in the US are the highest they've been since the Civil War. So we've got some problems, we've got some differences, and my invitation to you is to reach out to someone who has a different political view than you do and see if you might be able to build a bridge, see if you might be able to create conditions for better listening and less judgment. By the way, this is not about having to agree with people, but what it can be about is finding the humanity in people that disagree with you or that think wildly differently, or that, and this is mostly the case, just value different things than you do, right? So I believe that part of integral leadership development is learning how to value things that you historically have never valued or little valued, and learning how to place more importance and value on them. The advantages of doing this is it allows you to move in the world easier because you can find some kind of commonality with more people, or you can at least understand where people are coming from. Most people, if you dig into their experience, have valid reasons for holding the perspectives that they do. You and I grow generally, is my view, but it's not just me. The leadership literature, the developmental psych literature would point to this. You and I grow by our ability to hold multiple perspectives, right? That this and this and this and this could all be valid perspectives. One way of thinking about this is the classic personal development example of the people in a dark room who are groping an elephant, and they're all describing different parts of the elephant, the tail, the trunk, the tusk, but they're actually all describing the same thing just from their vantage point. Now, I don't actually think that in every situation we're all describing the same thing from a different vantage point. Sometimes we just have very different lived experience. Sometimes our taste buds are different, by which I mean, this is drawing on Jonathan Haidt's work, that we naturally taste, we value different things. Some people naturally have a taste bud for sweet, some people for savory, some people for bitter. I think it's true in a civic and political context. Some people naturally value freedom more than order. Some people value order more than freedom. And when you start to look at it that way, you might even get curious as to whether your own beliefs about the world, about politics, about our collective ways of doing life together, whether you chose them or whether they chose you. Did you sit down at some point at 25 and take weeks and months and really read literature and philosophy and survey the territory and then come to some kind of balanced, nuanced view about how the world works and who you are and your place within it? Or did you grow up in a certain political context where people valued certain things, where they were more right or more left or more liberal or libertarian or anti-establishment or whatever the case may be, and that somehow you inherited those beliefs and perspectives, or alternatively, you didn't like them and you pushed off against them? Or did you just at some point kind of have a way of looking at the world and it hasn't really been examined in the last several years? So you learning how to build bridges with other people, I feel absolutely clear that that is a developmental opportunity for you. The less resistance you have to people that think differently means you can walk in the world with less frustration, less animosity, less resentment and hatred towards other people. And I'm not talking about the active hatred of actively going out and speaking badly of people. I'm talking about the inner experience of aversion, of snarky comments, of being superior or inferior to other people, of pedestaling or putting down other people depending on how they think about the world. If we really are growing to be a more interdependent humanity, which I think the data for that is relatively, it's arguable, but I think suggestive. Whether you look at the fact that we have one atmosphere, whether you look at the fact that we have interconnected oceans, whether you look at, e-commerce, telecommunications, nanotechnology, biotech, AR, VR, AI. I mean, all these technologies in some ways are giving us opportunities to converge and to be part of an interrelated fate of humanity. Even whilst, and this is the ability to hold multiple perspectives, postmodernism in its tendency to deconstruct is also giving us opportunities to be the most divergent we've ever been. If you go on YouTube or TikTok or any other social media platform, you have an individually algorithmically customized stream of information. What you are seeing is probably different than any other person in the world. When did that happen in human history, right? So your ability to express who you are, your views, and have a platform for them, your ability to inhabit different identities, genders, sexuality, and others. We're in unprecedented territory. I was reading a study from a Dutch research firm called Glocalities this last week. And they were saying that young women currently are the most liberal group ever to have lived in the history of humanity. That's unprecedented. And at the same time, young men are actually more conservative than men above the age of 55. And this is the first time that they think this has happened. So we are in interesting times. Things are being redefined. Things are being reimagined. We've got big tensions between different value systems that are competing for our attention and for our credibility as sense-making, as ways of navigating the world. I spent 10 years, I'm here. This is, let's get the blue skies here. Come on. No, I can't do it. I'm here in Boulder, Colorado. This is Boulder Creek, a place I spent a lot of time over the last decade, including a lot of time when I lived here. And part of what brought me to Boulder was to be part of something called the Integral Community. And this was a group of philosophers, practitioners, personal growth junkies, education people, parenting gurus, all sorts of people, but who were basically imagining that we are living in different value systems, and that the integral promise is that the more you can understand and value those different value systems and not have to push off them, the more that you can include them within yourself, the more you actually get to understand what is happening in the world, and the more you can connect with other people, understand where they're coming from, understand yourself, and the more we can actually find our unity in our difference, right? That is the great promise of America, right? A pluribus unum, from the many one. We need that now more than ever, but I think we need it in a new developmental territory. We need a new synthesis of understanding of, wow, we are living in different value systems, a traditional, a modern, and a postmodern value systems. They look different, they value different things, they have different views of the self and what reality in life is, different views of what truth is. Even to take one simple thing, what is truth? Do we live in a post-truth world? Well, what that really means is we have a postmodern understanding of truth, which is not a sort of a centralized broadcast understanding of truth only. It's not only a scientific understanding of truth or a rational understanding of what's true. It's not only a traditional understanding of what's true, which is to do with traditions, mores, authority figures, traditional religious values and views, sacred texts, but we actually are living into postmodern truth, which means you and I have a subjective truth that is true in our experience. What I might experience is true, and what you might experience is true from the very same conversation. If you and I are in conversation, maybe different things. And you're going to work to see, can you be with these different ways of what might be true? It makes your life better, I believe, from my own experience of trying this for over 10 years. And it also makes you better neighbors, because it makes you more willing to be with someone whose orientation to what's true may be very different than your own. Or if, for instance, you are mostly in a modernist, scientific, rational view of reality, it could challenge you to get curious. Are there other ways of understanding the world that are useful to you now? Do you need to push into more of an understanding of embodied truth? Do you need to get more connected to somatic experience and what your body is telling you might be true? Things like gut instinct, things like resonating in your body, or what people call a full body yes or no. That's some way of knowing what might be true. Could you also get curious if there are certain spiritual or inner work realities that are different from religious realities that perhaps you grew up with and had to move away from, perhaps you've been fully identified with, and now is your opportunity to loosen that identification? do you get to see more, right? Value systems are like glasses, or what in fancy speak we call heuristics, things that you view reality through. The more you can change out the heuristics, or notice at least that you're with a heuristic, the more clearly you can see, right? If a horse has blinders or blinkers, but it doesn't know those things exist, it doesn't know that it's got a limited reality, right? But we take the blinkers off and we see more. If you are so identified with a traditional or modern or postmodern view that anyone that has a different view, you consider them lesser, wrong, stupid, ill-informed, uneducated, I'm here to tell you there's more for you. There's more for you to see, right? Even if it's true, possibly, that you see more than another person, I'm saying to you with wholehearted conviction based on my experience and coaching people in this terrain for a decade, there could be more for you to see. And you might just like your life more when you have fewer unconsciously identified heuristics. You know, I left my shades in the car, but if I'm looking through my shades and I don't even know, I'm limiting my sense of reality. There's something special about seeing someone's humanity, even when you disagree. There's something special about learning how to disagree more accurately. Like actually being able to listen to the contours and nuance of what someone may be saying, even when it's bringing up your own triggers, and seeing can you manage your triggers to stay curious about what someone's experience is and what they are telling you about their life. There's a little mantra we have in the integral world that no one is 100% right and no one is 100% wrong. And when you take that on, again, it's not the full truth, it's a heuristic, but when you take that on, it allows you to get curious that the person that you so dislike or so disagree with or seems to stand for something that's so abhorrent, what is the at least partial truth in what they're saying? Sometimes the partial truth is a sub-communication. You might have had the experience, perhaps you're very angry with someone and you're litigating the past and bringing up all sorts of stuff. And maybe there are partial truths in what you're saying, maybe there are unmetabolized hurts from the past, but a big part of your sub-communication is, I'm hurt and angry. And we could get fixated on the content, but sometimes you have to let the content be and actually just get directly with the felt experience. This person's angry, they want to be heard, let me hear them. So when someone is saying something to you that you think is abhorrent or untasteful, or perhaps it's even, at its worst, one of the ists, maybe it's partially sexist, racist, things that we take a stand against, and at the same time we can still be in contact with what might be the sense of disappointment or hurt or frustration or difficult experience or wage depression or community dislocation or just the way someone was raised or their way of interpreting a religious text that might have them in this view. And that if I only seek the things out that I don't like in what they're saying, maybe I'm actually missing some other communication, that they need help, they need support, they're confused, they miss the past, they are nostalgic, right? So none of this is about being apologetic for things that we rightfully take a stand against. But even if you're anti-racist, you could also be pro something else, right? You could be pro-tolerant, pro-understanding, pro-being with your actual experience, not your should experience, right? A lot of times you want to should and shame on other people, and actually learning how to be with, they have a different experience. It's maybe not my business to tell someone how they should feel. Maybe I can get curious in a phenomenological way and what are the actual phenomena of their experience? What do they actually feel? What do I actually feel? Maybe we should start here rather than superimposing how I or you should feel. So this is my invitation to you. I don't know all the ways that we do this work together. I do have a perspective and I feel quite strongly convicted that we have got to do more of this work together, locally, nationally, globally, in service of us getting through what are going to be deeply challenging and transformative times, I believe. Maybe we've already seen some of it in the United States, Capitol 6 riots. Maybe we're seeing some of it with the likely constitutional crisis I think we may be heading with one of the two presidential candidates possibly facing jail time or criminal charges. This is unprecedented territory, and if we want to have a functioning country on the other side, we're going to go through some growing pains, because I think what got us here isn't going to get us there. And you can look at that as a sense of hopelessness, or you can Google, how do I go live in Canada? Or How do I kind of not pay any attention to this so maybe I can just stay in my lane? All of those things I think are valid responses. And I also want to call to the one in you that might want to stay and try to build something better, because we're going to need people in these times of dislocation. You know, transformation is a breaking down and a building up. I know that from coaching, right? If you're going to transform really your sense of self, you often got to start with letting things go, right? With letting things die, with ways of being that you have taken to be yourself, actually disidentifying and allowing something new to come forward. That process is hard, it's scary, it's painful, it's disorienting, and it sometimes alienates you from other people because they don't necessarily get what's going on for you. We are going to have to, I think, at a collective level, start disidentifying and from some old ways of being, right? Which might just be that we're treating ourselves as consumers and not civic beings, citizens that need to be more engaged in the process of what matters in our community. The old way of being might be that we took our decisions and we outsourced it to a representative body. But that system was set up here, 250 years ago, and it might not be sufficient for what's going to take us to our next way of being collectively that needs more of our intelligence involved in the process. I don't know all the ways that this unfolds. I have intuitions and ways of making meaning that have been useful to me, and I want to invite more of us to be in the process of imagining, hey, it might take you to be part of figuring out where we need to go from here. That the old way of being, that you show up and vote, surrender your power for 4 years, kind of get the right to complain about what's going on and then come back to the polls, is such a blunt instrument in a 21st century AR, VR, AI world that we've only just started the thin edge of getting going with. We're going to need more of us involved in the decision making to have the ownership and self-governance of what really is going on. And because if you can plug more people into a system, generally you're getting more data and intelligence. I've been reading this a lot recently, that those closest to the pain should be closest to the power. That we may need to reimagine how power is held in our society so that some of the people who most know about marginalization or being the victims of oppression or being the ones that the mainstream narratives have never talked to or left out, that we might need to be with those people in different ways and invite them into the process. If you have been experiencing a sense of hopelessness, frustration, and despair, I want to say that I do honestly believe there are brighter days ahead. I just don't think they are immediately around the corner. And that's the same process that I might be with someone who wants to face themselves and disidentify from their core wounds, defenses, and the personas that they put out in the world. When you face yourself in that way in a coaching or other environment, you're doing difficult work. It takes courage. And some days it's really confusing. And some days you might have the experience, I'm not even making progress here, right? Real progress on those things in life, in my experience, is hard, and it involves suffering, and it involves being willing to be with suffering and showing up. So you might say, hey, thanks, Jack, for being so hopeful. My sense of hope isn't a set of expectations about how things have to unfold. It is a deeper held sense that there is an evolutionary impulse that operates through us and in this world, and that over time lots of things do get better. Whether it is gender equality, whether it is the way that we care for the environment, even if we haven't been able to enact that in collective agreements and legislation and ways of doing business that support the environment. Most of the people I know think caring about the environment is a good way of being, and they care about the environment. Whether it's our connection with our interiority, that more people think that therapy and coaching is valid, that more people care about their inner experience, their authentic emotional experience, what is actually happening, and they care about connecting to that in another person, and they're not just always talking about third-party stuff, what's happening out there in the world with, Donald Trump or the celebs or the influencers, that they actually want to be embodied in their own reality and care about their own experience. I see that, and particularly generationally, I see that accelerating fast. When I first came to Boulder 10 years ago and people were talking about healing, I was like, what now? Healing what? What is this healing? Now, and again, it's a personalized information stream, but I go on social media, I see lots of people talking about this. I see people talking about this in their teens and in their early 20s. And it's like, yeah, things that our generation and generations older than my own have fought hard for, have been in the vanguard. Some of that stuff is getting downloaded into younger generations, and they're going to take it further. That to me is the evolutionary imperative. So I have hope. It's just not a starry-eyed vote for Barack Obama style of hope. That's totally allowed. But it's more of a quiet knowing that there is an intelligence, there is something, an impulse that is operating through us, and things often quietly get better, not without our agency, right? That's often because people show up and put their lives on the line and put their reputations on the line and do all sorts of good things. But there is a lot for us to be part of, and as one small dude just trying to make sense of it myself and be part of the solution, I'm making a personal invitation to you to get you on board, that we need you in the room, that your voice matters, that your presence matters, and that it's going to take a lot of us to be part of something to navigate these collective transformations that we might need to go in to create the world that maybe you and I at a deep heart level know is possible, want to hope is possible, and want to be part of a fairer, more equal world where more people matter and more voices matter, and that we also have an attitude of caringness towards each other and towards the environment. But not in a way that minimizes differences, not in a way that means that other people have to think like us, like a mature, sober realization of some of the deeper ideals that perhaps you've long held, but have maybe more recently imagined whether they could ever find expression in the world. So I'd love to know if you're picking up what I'm putting down. Please leave me a comment. I read all the comments. What's going on in your life? What are you seeing? What are you worried about? What makes sense of what I've said to you? What doesn't make sense? I welcome pushback. I'm not attached to being right. I can only see what I can see. But I just felt inspired this morning to maybe offer something to you that might give you some ease and maybe activate your desire to be part of a solution in a way that we often don't hear messages like that, in a world that's often seeming that people are hopeless and frustrated and don't know how to push that into a direction that's fruitful. So I'm Jack. As always, thanks for being here.